Are you a creator or a joker? A director or an explorer? And if you know the answer to these, how can it make you more productive? Hi, I'm Sam, and I help you achieve more than you ever thought was possible. In today's video, we're looking at 10 lessons that I learned from Ali Abdaal's book, Feeling Good Productivity. Let's dive into lesson number 1. Why feeling good makes us more productive. You've all had those days when you wake up the wrong side of bed, maybe you've not had enough sleep, your heart is not really in it, and you're just not being that productive. Maybe on those days you spend time scrolling on your phone or watching Netflix. Equally, you've probably had days when you feel great and you feel like you've got loads of stuff done. As the title of the book suggests, when we're feeling good, we're generally more creative and more productive. When we're in a positive mood, we tend to consider a broader range of action, be more open to new experiences, and better integrate the information that we receive. In other words, feeling good boosts our creativity and our productivity. Therefore, success doesn't lead to feeling good leads to success. How can we force ourselves to feel better about work that we don't feel like doing? Ali suggests that we need to make the work resonate with who we are as people. He shares a number of play personalities that we all identify with. You might be a collector that loves to collect things and rummage around in garage sales. You might be a competitor who loves sports and is all about the winning. You might be an explorer who likes to discover new places and new things. Or you might be a creator who gets their joy from drawing, making, and building things. The storyteller has an active imagination and likes to use their imagination to entertain others. The joker likes to make people laugh. The director likes to plan, organise, and lead other people. And finally, the kinesthete, I hope I'm saying that right, likes acrobatics, sports, athletics, and being physical. Once you've identified the type of character you are, try and bring that into your work. So if you're a storyteller, for example, you might approach a long, boring email by trying to turn it into a story with an exciting beginning, middle, and end. So productivity is not just about our abilities, it's how we feel about our abilities too. But how can we change the way we feel about ourselves? That brings us on to lesson number 2, fake it until you make it. If you don't believe that you're a good public speaker, then you're more likely to feel scared talking to a large crowd. You might even find ways to avoid it altogether. If there are certain tasks that you're putting off because you're scared of doing them, one tactic here is simply to flick the confidence switch. In other words, challenge yourself to act as if you are confident in that situation, even if you're not. Simply ask, what would this look like if I were really confident at it? What would it look like if I approached this task feeling confident that I could do it? We are what we pretend to be. If pretending to be someone or something sounds difficult, then another way to gain confidence about certain tasks is to watch other people do it. That brings us on to lesson number 3, watch others to get more confident. Imagine you've got a big project you need to do at work. You've not done it before, and you convince yourself that it's difficult. And the more you think about it, the more difficult it seems, to the point where you convince yourself that this task is impossible. Now imagine if, before attempting this, you see one of your colleagues present the results of some similar work that they've done before. Suddenly it seems less daunting and more realistic for you to achieve. You become more confident that this thing can actually be done. In your day-to-day life, this might mean reading books about something, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos. The more you hear from other people who have attacked this particular problem and solved it, the more realistic it seems to you that you can achieve it yourself. Lesson number 4, choose your mindset. When I was little, my parents used to drag me up mountains in the Lake District, and as I was walking through the pouring rain, I would often ask myself, why do I have to do this? And we still do that as adults today. We ask ourselves, why do I have to do this? Pay attention to those times because it can affect how you feel about the task. If you ever find yourself asking, why do I have to do this? Try and change your mindset and instead tell yourself, I choose to do this, or I get to do this, or even I'm blessed to do this. Saying have to makes us feel powerless. Saying I get to makes us feel powerful. Whenever you feel like you have to do something, think again about how you're framing it. You can even do this in situations where you didn't choose to do something. Viktor Frankl, who was in the Auschwitz concentration camp during World War II, famously said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." There will be times when self-motivation fails us, however, and we need another tool. This brings us on to lesson number 5, discipline over motivation. So when motivation fails, where do we turn? Much advice tells us to look at another principle, discipline. Put simply, discipline is when we do something that we don't really want to be doing. It's the opposite of motivation. It's taking action no matter how unmotivated you are. Let's take the example of going for a jog in the morning. A motivated statement might be, I'm going for a run because I value going for this run and training for a marathon more than I do staying in my warm, comfy bed. Whereas a disciplined statement might be, I'm going to go for this run today no matter how I feel. This is where habits can help. We don't say I'm motivated to brush my teeth today. You brush your teeth because it's become a habit. The more you do something over and over again, the more it becomes a part of who you are. Lesson 6, we need to know where we're going. Often the reason we don't make a start on a project is because we don't exactly know where we're trying to get to. This well-studied phenomenon is called uncertainty paralysis. It happens when we're overwhelmed by the complexity of a situation and we just don't know how to act. This paralysis prevents us from making progress on tasks and projects, even though we know they're really important. Uncertainty makes us feel bad and we achieve less. So what's the solution? You need to make sure you've got really clear goals. And that brings us on to lesson number 7. Make goals nice. Most people have heard of SMART goals: smart, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based goals. But often people don't use them. One of the reasons Ali says in this book is that SMART goals can often be based on something very far in the future. Instead, Ali suggests using NICE goals. NICE stands for near-term, input-based, controllable, and energizing. So near-term goals are ones that focus on the next immediate steps that we need to take to move us forward in a particular project. So this might be something to do each day or each week rather than years ahead. They help us avoid being overwhelmed by the bigger picture. I is for input-based goals. Input-based goals focus on the process rather than the end result. So rather than saying, I'm going to lose 10 kilograms by the end of the year, you might say, I'm going to walk for 1 kilometre every day. Rather than saying, I'm going to publish a book by next year, your input-based goal might be, I'm going to write 20 pages each morning. C is for controllable, and essentially this means making a goal realistic. So you're not going to say, I'm going to spend 8 hours a day writing my book. Instead, make the task controllable. Maybe say, I'll spend half an hour each day. And finally, E for energizing. Goals should be energizing, and we talked earlier in the video about how you can do this by identifying your play character and bringing that play character into the work that you're doing. What I really like about these NICE goals is that they can be much more easily translated into day-to-day activities and then transferred into your calendar. As you know, I really like putting things in my calendar because I'm much more likely then to get it done. Lesson 8, picture your failure. This is a strange one, but it essentially forces you to think about what could go wrong once you've set your goal. So you've heard of a post-mortem that analyzes everything that went wrong after you did it. A pre-mortem is when you think about what you're trying to achieve and think about what could go wrong. So imagine it's a week later and you haven't achieved your task for whatever reason. What could be the reasons that you failed that week? Once you've identified what those barriers might be, then you can put things in place to mitigate against them. As I said earlier, one of the main reasons we fail to do something that we said we would is because we don't allocate time to it. We have all these grand plans and visions, But if we don't commit to it by putting it in the calendar, it's not going to happen. Which brings me on to lesson number 9, decide when to do something. If you don't know when you're going to do something, chances are you won't stick to it. And Ali gives 2 examples here. Firstly, of smaller tasks that you want to do on a regular basis. These are kind of like habits. And one useful tip here is habit stacking, where you say, every time I brush my teeth, for example, I will stretch my calf muscles. So you trigger habits by stacking them on top of existing habits. For bigger goals, they've got to go in the calendar. The fancy term for this is time blocking. I don't use the term time blocking because essentially means put something in your calendar. And this includes your personal goals as well as meetings and presentations that you might have to give at work. Finally, lesson number 10, feel the fear and do it anyway. The part of the brain that makes us scared is called the amygdala. And this exists in humans to protect us, essentially. So this would kick in if we were under threat when we lived in caves. The trouble is the amygdala is quite jumpy and it tends to overreact to all sorts of situations. And quite often the reason you're not making progress on a task is because your amygdala is kicking in. You might put off a report because you're scared of being judged, for example. The amygdala is very useful, so we don't want to stop it altogether, but we do want to get better at recognizing it. And the way we do this is by putting our feelings into words, which forces us to identify and get to know the feelings as we're experiencing them. By naming and acknowledging our fears, we cultivate more self-awareness that helps us better understand our emotions. So when you find yourself procrastinating, ask yourself, where is this fear coming from? And is it justified? Also ask yourself if it's a me fear or a them fear. Is it a fear of being judged by others, or is the fear coming from within yourself? Once you've labelled the fear, you can go back to faking it until you make it. You could ask yourself, how confident do I need to be to get started on this task? You might even choose to use the 5-minute rule. So this is where you say to yourself, I will work on this task for only 5 minutes, which feels a lot less daunting than if you think you're going to be working on it for hours. A lot of the time, if you start the task, you will keep going beyond the 5 minutes. But if you think 5 minutes is enough, then stop. If you enjoyed this video, you can find out more about how I manage my time here. And if you want to buy Ali's book, there's a link in the description below. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Love you. Bye.